All right, welcome back. New patch dropped today, and finally a step in the right direction. Let's talk about the easy ones first. These are the patch notes for today on PC. The first one, pirates now grant perception instead of stealth, which is really awesome. But I don't understand why this always happens. There's always some catch. They reduce the amount to 50, so 50 perception instead of 150 perception. I do think that these probably stack. When they granted stealth, they didn't stack, but now they do. So that means, I guess technically if you really wanted to, you could get 250 perception by slotting 5 pirates, which is a decent amount more perception. I don't think anybody will actually do that. Most players, use a Romulan SRO or something in the tactical seat, or if there's 2 tactical seats. So, probably a maximum of 150 if you had 3 pirates slotted, something like that. And Fed side can't slot as many, so maybe it's a good thing that it was nerfed, because it would give KDF a little bit too much of an advantage, I think, since there aren't as many Federation side bridge officers with the pirate trait. So that's probably a necessary evil to nerf it like this. I think what they should have done is just made it not stack and left it at 150, but overall, good change. And then the other easy one, the issue with attack pattern Lambda is finally fixed. Rank 2 and 3 now correctly scale, so that's finally over. Easy typo fix on that one, so no problems there. Now let's talk about the big ticket item, the gravity well. Temporal Anchor. So I did ask for this to be nerfed in the fixing PvP video that I did, and I also have been relatively vocal about it on Reddit and all that. But in the fixing PvP video that I uploaded, I specifically said that instead of lowering the chance, they should just lower the number of times that it stacks. Only allow it to stack 3 times, I think I said in that video. Something like that would have probably been a better fix than this. I mean, 2% is absurdly low, considering it was 20% before. I mean, 2% is so low that it's basically pretty much killed this trait. I mean, if a lot of people are still using it and there's a lot of aftershock gravity wells, then it starts to get a little bit better. I mean, the main problem before, so a lot of people don't understand this because they're not PvPers, but one ship can have 5 gravity wells out at the same time. Like, I've seen math behind some of the other things, and it is, when you drop a gravity well and you have the duty officer that creates the aftershock gravity wells, that is a % chance, so it's not all the time. But if you have 2 or 3 ships all with Temporal Anchor and all with aftershock gravity wells, you could have 5, 10, 15 gravity wells on screen all in the same area at the same time, all stacking and applying this 20% chance thing. So that was way, way overpowered. And I think in one of the other videos I said if they couldn't stop it from stacking, they should do like 10% or 5%. And I think 2% is probably too far. And they tried to make up for it a little bit by making it 2 seconds instead of 1. But one of the other critical things, if it was just 2% and that was the only nerf, then I could get behind it. But this, maybe the second part, is what pushes it a little bit too far. And that's, it only affects bridge officer abilities, not universal consoles or captain abilities. It never affected weapons, so I'm not sure why that's there. It's not boarding party. So, there were plenty of times I could say when I was stuck in a red gravity well and someone flew in front of me and I shot and blew them up. So, weapons definitely still work. But the problem now is that when you use a gravity well on somebody, even if you get the cooldown recharge times, thing, all they have to do is hit one escape console, Alachi Rift or invasive maneuvers or whatever, and, they have no problem escaping now. And, I mean, I still think this is one of those, glass half full, positive kind of changes, because overall, even though I think this nerf went too far, this is still a positive change. I mean, we were at the point where a couple of red gravity well users completely skewed the fight in a way that it was all red wells. I mean, the optimal PvP team is 5 players all running red gravity well, you know, all on the same team. And that's not really any fun. I mean, it really shoehorns you into, you know, forcing you into that kind of build. And I think another thing that that really bothers me lately after seeing this patch notes is reading some of the comments from players on YouTube and Reddit and stuff like that. I mean, they nerfed it in a way that only affects PvP, right? This change does not affect PvE at all. So there's not really much to complain about. I mean, the Temporal Anchor is one of the only traits in the entire game that you can only get by buying the 10th anniversary bundle, you know, which is $200 or whatever. And now it's not that good anymore. If anything, I mean, this made the game more accessible. This is a good change. I mean, there's certain people you can't win, right? If you nerf a legendary trait like this, then they say, oh, you nerfed a really expensive trait, it's not worth the money anymore. And then if they don't nerf it, then they say, oh, it's pay to win. You know, you can't win with those people, so it's not even worth really addressing. But there is one thing I wanted to talk about. Right, so if we look at Temporal Anchor, it says gravity wells deal an additional 20% as radiation damage. And I'm not sure why this is so confusing. I watched Augie's video on this, and he seemed to be not totally sure how that works either, but he was right in saying that it's a very tiny amount of damage, and that's true. So the 20% additional damage is based on the base kinetic damage of the well itself. So if you look here, the Gravity Well 3 I'm using does 1500 kinetic damage. And if I shoot this target that I have in front of me, basically, because Temporal Anchor is on, it's going to deal 2 hits instead of 1. Instead of just kinetic damage every second, it's going to deal kinetic damage and then radiation damage as a separate hit every second. And you can see it very clearly on the combat log over here in the corner. So watch. Gravity Well. If you look here, it says, you know, here are all the hits. But if you look, you've got a kinetic damage hit and a radiation damage hit every second for the duration of the Gravity Well. Now, it is terrible. It's a tiny amount of damage because it doesn't really scale up very well with other sources of like bonus exotic damage and all that stuff. It'd be nice if that part of the trait got some kind of buff, but we're not any worse off than we were before. I'm not sure why there are so many PvE players complaining that they nerfed Red Gravity Well. This trait sucked in PvE even when it was first introduced. So this change, if you're a PvEer, it doesn't affect you anyway, so why are you complaining? Okay, well, what's next? I think Red Gravity Well is a huge step in the right direction, having that nerfed. And now, what I'd really like to see fixed is the Untargetable abilities. So, you know, Intel Team and Stealth I think is still a little bit overpowered, but I've already talked that to death. And Lambda getting fixed, you know, will help with that a little bit. But it's still... there are still abilities that make you 100% untargetable, regardless of how much perception or any other skill that you have. And let me just demonstrate that. This old major in front of me here, I'll have him use Evade Target Lock. There it goes. And even though I can target him and my abilities are lit up, I can't actually activate anything that is enemy targeted. I'm trying to click, you know, here as we go. And now I finally can fire once that effect wears off. But that was 10 seconds. And then if I just add the Bozeman trait right after that, and especially, you know, if I'm using abilities to get the Bozeman trait on cooldown faster, it's the same effect. You know, I can visually see that ship. And I can't target right now. There it goes. So between Evade Target Lock and the Bozeman Temporal Surge trait, that's 20 seconds untargetable every 40 seconds. Then you have Intel Team that is, you know, a huge stealth advantage that works 9 seconds every 10. So you could basically be untargetable for 90% or more of the fight. And if you're really skilled at activating, timing your abilities, you could be untargetable the vast majority, and especially add in a couple of other universal consoles, like fluidic decoupler, right? Can't target or shoot him in that either until he comes out. That only lasts 6 seconds, but you get what I'm saying. If you have a couple of escape consoles like that, and then you also use evade target lock and temporal surge, and you don't just spam them together at the same time, you space them out to take advantage of the maximum amount of untargetable time. And I know I flew that ship, and I flew the Bozeman variant of it in a PvP match, and the whole night I only had 1 death, and it was just from timing those untargetable abilities. That's something that needs to be changed, because anything that's straight up on off like that, that's not counterable, needs to be fixed. And of course the next one, competitive marks are still not in PvP matches. I think if you complete a PvP match, 15 kills or whatever from the public queues, it should award you some competitive marks. And, I think ideally the winning team should get a stratagem as well. But, even if it's just marks, it's something that should be offered. I think that, that needs to be added. And the last thing is spawn protection. I talked about this more in another video about kind of the optimal way I think to do it. But even if they just took the bases from capture and hold with these turrets and everything, and they didn't make any other changes, they just copied and pasted this whole block and just dropped it into Karat on either side, or into the arenas on either side. And I know arenas, sometimes the spawns are random, but it would be something. I'd like to see it optimized a little bit. Maybe at least make the turrets immune to damage or something, or make them respawn after a certain period of time. And I always wonder, this shuttle bay here, actually exists. I always wonder if they thought about doing some kind of spawn protection thing. Because if you spawned in like a little bay like this, where you could maybe like pre-buff, something like that, before you flew out, and you were immune until you actually left the starbase, I think that would be a huge improvement. Alright, well that's all I have now. I'm pretty pleased overall with the changes, and I hope we see a couple more fixes on some of the other stuff that I just mentioned, Untargetable and all that. And that pretty much goes a long way towards balancing most of the issues in PvP. And I don't know, it's looking good, so count me optimistic for the future. Alright, have a good one.